Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I never thought a simple joke could change everything. My name is Clara, and I've been married to Henry for almost 7 years. We met in college, both of us young, idealistic, and ridiculously in love. I used to tease him endlessly about his obsession with board games and his inability to cook anything beyond scrambled eggs. And he'd laugh every single time, shaking his head like he couldn't believe how lucky he was to have me. Tonight, we were at a friend's birthday dinner, a small gathering with familiar faces. The room smelled of roasted chicken and candles, laughter echoing from every corner. I had been feeling playful all evening, carrying the mischievous energy I always seemed to have when we were out together. At some point, the conversation shifted to marriage stories. Someone mentioned long-term habits couples develop, and without thinking I laughed and said, "Honestly, sometimes I feel like I married Henry for his looks and his collection of action figures. But not for his personality." The table went silent. I froze mid-laugh, realizing too late that everyone had turned to look at him. My heart sank in my chest. I thought Henry would chuckle, maybe roll his eyes like he used to in the early days, but instead he just stared at me. His face was unreadable, a mask of calm I had rarely seen before. I tried to recover, smiling nervously and waving a hand as if to say, "Just kidding." But the words felt hollow in my own ears. There was an awkward pause, like the air itself had stiffened. I could feel the gaze of every friend pinning me down. I wanted to disappear. My cheeks burned, and I realized that this was the moment I had underestimated him. Then Henry spoke. His voice was calm, deliberate, and somehow colder than I expected. "Clara," he said, and my stomach dropped. "If you think that's funny, you clearly don't know me at all." A ripple of tension passed through the table. I wanted to laugh it off, to brush it off with the same ease I used to, but something in his tone made it impossible. The Henry the first knew, the warm, teasing man who could make me laugh until my ribs hurt, was gone for a moment, replaced by a version of him I had never met, and perhaps never wanted to. I sat there, stunned, as he continued. "Marriage isn't a punchline, Clara. It's a promise. Every joke you make in front of others, it chips away at trust, at respect. I've always stood by you, supported you, laughed with you. But tonight this..." His eyes didn't waver. "This is not okay." The silence in the room was deafening. My friends exchanged glances, unsure whether to intervene or just let the storm pass. I felt the weight of my own words pressing down on me. It was funny, right? That's what I had thought. A harmless tease. A little nudge at the man I loved. But in that moment I realized that even the smallest joke said in the wrong tone at the wrong time could mean so much more than I intended. Henry leaned back slightly, but the intensity never left his gaze. I could see the hurt, yes, but also something else, clarity. He was steady, composed, and unlike anything I had expected in that social setting. He didn't yell. He didn't shout. He didn't make a scene. But in those calm words, he ended the joke, and with it, the playful dynamic we had carried for so long in front of others. I wanted to apologize, to laugh nervously, to say, "I didn't mean it," but every attempt felt feeble. My voice caught in my throat. I felt the tension twist inside me, a mixture of guilt and a sudden, piercing respect for the man sitting across the table. Henry had always been patient, always been forgiving. And yet, he had drawn a line. A quiet, unshakable line, and I knew that crossing it had consequences I hadn't considered. I shifted in my seat, trying to gauge the mood. Everyone else was frozen, waiting. And then he did something I hadn't expected. Instead of lecturing me further, he simply said, "Let's go home, Clara. We need to talk." The room exhaled collectively, though I felt like I was still holding my breath. My friends murmured quietly among themselves, but I could barely hear them. My mind was spinning, trying to unpack every word, every glance, every moment that had led to this. I had laughed. I had teased. I had meant it as harmless fun. And yet, in a single instant, Henry had turned the entire evening inside out. Walking to the car, the tension was thick. Henry didn't yell. He didn't slam doors. But the quiet between us was heavier than any argument we had ever had. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the seatbelt, and I could feel his presence beside me. Steady, composed, immovable. I wanted to ask if he was angry, if he was upset, if we were okay. But the words felt inadequate. I realized that sometimes it's not the big arguments, not the screaming matches, not the dramatic fights that test a marriage. Sometimes it's a single line, a single moment, a single joke that reveals what really matters. Henry started the engine, and the soft hum filled the space between us. I wanted to speak, to fill the silence, but I knew better. I needed to listen. I needed to understand. And in that quiet, I realized that the joke hadn't ended just the evening. It had ended something deeper. The casual way we had carried our love into public spaces. It had made me see him, not as a man to tease, not as a husband who would always tolerate everything, but as a partner who demanded respect, who deserved consideration, who would quietly, firmly hold his ground. The ride home was quiet, but in that silence, I felt every inch of the distance my words had created. Henry didn't raise his voice, didn't accuse me, didn't even sigh dramatically. He simply drove, his hands firm on the wheel, his jaw tight. And in that quiet, I understood something profound. He wasn't angry. He was disappointed. And that disappointment cut deeper than any argument ever could. When we reached home, I hesitated at the doorway. The soft glow of the living room lights felt strangely intimate, almost accusatory. Henry gestured for me to sit, and I did, careful not to make a sound. He closed the door behind him and leaned against it, crossing his arms. He didn't say anything at first, letting the weight of the evening sink in. I wanted to shrink, to apologize, to explain, but every word felt meaningless in the shadow of what had just happened. Finally he spoke. "Clara," he said softly, "I love you. I always have. But tonight reminded me that love isn't just about shared laughs or playful teasing. It's about understanding each other, respecting each other, knowing when a line has been crossed." I swallowed hard, feeling tears prick at the edges of my eyes. His words were calm, but they carried a weight I hadn't realized existed. I didn't think it mattered," I whispered, my voice cracking slightly. "It was just a joke. I didn't mean." Henry shook his head gently. "It does matter. Every time we belittle each other in front of others, every time we make a joke at the other's expense, it builds up. Tonight I saw clearly that I can't ignore that anymore. I won't. I wanted to argue, to laugh it off, but I couldn't. There was no room for denial here. His tone left no gaps, no escape. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't admitted even to myself. I had underestimated him. I had assumed our love was untouchable, that his patience was infinite, that our playful banter could survive anything. But I was wrong. Henry reached for my hand, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of the warmth we had once shared. "I'm not trying to punish you," he said, his voice steady. "I'm trying to show you who I am, what I need, what I deserve. And I need you to understand that jokes, even harmless ones, carry weight. Respect carries weight. Love carries weight. And tonight, I needed you to see that." I nodded, tears spilling freely now. I had always known Henry was serious about us, about the marriage, but I had taken it lightly. Taken him lightly. And now, staring at him, I understood fully that respect was the foundation we had been walking on all these years, and I had chipped at it without realizing it. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I didn't mean to. I wasn't thinking. I didn't think." Henry squeezed my hand once, firmly, decisively. "I know you didn't think. But thinking is exactly what we need to do. Always. Together." The night stretched quietly, the tension slowly unraveling, leaving behind a sense of clarity I hadn't expected. We didn't talk about the joke again. We didn't analyze it or replay it. Instead, we sat together, holding hands, letting the silence do what words never could. It was a silent understanding, A lesson learned without shouting or tears or spectacle. In the days that followed, something shifted between us. I became more conscious of my words, more aware of the moments when teasing might cross a line. Henry became quieter, not coldly, but with a calm assurance that reminded me he was no longer a man who would tolerate disrespect silently. Our marriage didn't change overnight, but the dynamic between us did. A new layer of respect settled in, one built not on laughter alone, but on understanding and consideration. Sometimes I think back to that night at the birthday dinner, the way the room fell silent, the way Henry had spoken, and I realize how delicate love can be. How easily it can be shaken by words we don't think carry weight, by jokes that seem harmless in the moment. But I also see how strong it can be, how resilience grows when respect is restored, when boundaries are honored, and when two people truly see each other. That night taught me more about Henry than I had ever known. It taught me that love isn't just about shared memories or playful moments. It's about honoring the person beside you, even in small ways. It's about knowing when a line has been crossed and having the courage to say, calmly, clearly, and firmly, "This matters to me. This matters to us." And as I sit here reflecting on that evening, I realize something else. That joke, that fleeting moment of thoughtlessness, almost cost me more than I can put into words. But it didn't. Instead, it became a turning point, a reminder that love and respect must go hand in hand, and that sometimes the quietest reply is the one that changes everything. Henry didn't yell. He didn't dramatize. He didn't make it about me being wrong or him being right. He simply showed me in the calmest way possible who he was, and what our marriage deserved. And in that instant, I understood more than ever. Love is strong, but only when respect is louder than laughter.